Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Matterpod News. I think that's what we're going to call this. This is our weekly news update show for everything from the Matterport, virtual reality, metaverse, 3D industry, and we're pumped. We're going to focus a lot on Matterport specific news, but there will be different news, whether it's Matterport competitors or different news about metaverse companies or just 3D technology in general that will be very relevant. But if you are a Matterport 3D service provider and you want to keep up to date with kind of the latest Matterport or 3D developments, this is the spot for you. And we're going to give our opinions about what different news happenings mean for the Matterport industry. Without further ado, let me play our fancy news intro music to get us into today's episode. This is the Matterpod News with your host, Christian, Adam, and Carson. Okay, so this week, what we want to focus on is this new Matterport product called Matterport Digital Pro. Correct, Christian? Matterport Digital Pro?
Yeah, that's the one, Mav.
So basically, Christian's going to go in and talk about what Matterport Digital Pro is, and then we'll discuss what it means for all of us as Matterport service providers, because I think it's a pretty big deal. So go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, it's been a couple months now that they released Digital Pro is what they're calling it, and essentially what it is it's a product for real estate agents that's kind of a package deal. So within Digital Pro, if you order one of these services through Matterport, essentially Matterport is providing 5 different things to real estate agents. Obviously, a preview video, which is essentially just setting up a highlight reel and having the Matterport walk you through room by room. The other thing is a floor plan, and then they give you 25 HDR photos that they have curated and edited supposedly, and then obviously the 3D tour. So essentially what they're doing is saying, we will provide all of your real estate listing media needs, and it's just for one payment of $299. And from what I can tell, it's just a flat $299 across the board. It doesn't matter if you've got a 10,000 square foot listing or a 1,500 square foot listing. They're just going to charge you $299. And the way that I gathered that is if you click on this Order Now button and it takes you to the VHT Studios website, there's nowhere in the place where you actually order the services that asks you for a square footage, and the price doesn't change. And so kind of an interesting thing. I know that a lot of Matterport providers historically have charged on a price per square foot basis, or they have different tiers depending on the size of the house that they will charge to create the 3D tour. And so it is kind of an interesting move that they are going to a flat price across the board for all of these things. And so anyway, that's kind of an introduction of what it is. But Cars, I'd love to ask you, what do you think is their motive in creating Digital Pro? What is Matterport trying to do?
Yeah, I think the short answer, and maybe we have a little bit of insight into this after kind of working with some Matterport enterprise sales execs and things, but I think what you see just from like a Matterport stockholder perspective or stock price perspective is Matterport really needs to figure out how to make more revenue. And I think what they're discovering is in the ecosystem, in the Matterport ecosystem, their cloud hosting, fees, their monthly recurring fees that are based on the number of active models you have. I just think they're realizing they're only capturing like a fraction of the value that's taking place in the ecosystem. And so what I think to me this means is that Matterport is basically just trying to instead of migrating horizontally to find more revenue, they're migrating vertically in different, customer segments. And I think obviously one of the biggest customer segments for Matterport is realtors and these realtor brokerages. And it just makes sense. Someone might be on like a $9 a month or $20 a month Matterport cloud subscription, but then they're paying the Matterport service provider hundreds at least, or maybe even sometimes thousands of dollars, depending on the size of the space, like you said, Christian, to create the Matterport in general. And so I think what Matterport to me is seeing with the acquisition of VHT, and then obviously with this kind of digital pro bundle package, is in order to really drive long-term value, they need to capture more of the dollars that are in the ecosystem. And so this is just one customer segment that Matterport has chosen to navigate vertically up or upwards or downwards, I guess. But anyways, that's kind of what it signals to me.
Yeah, I think it's for sure an additional revenue stream that Matterport can tap into. And I want to, just going off that, I want to share one other thing that I think is interesting. In their Q4 earnings call, they're reporting their financials, and if you look on the services line item, you can see that in Q4 of 2021, their services made up $3.7 million in revenue, and in Q4 of 2022, it jumped up to $8.2 million. So they're reporting 122% increase in services revenue in Q4 of 2021 to Q4 of 2022. And so this is basically proving that what you're saying is true. They are trying to squeeze more dollars out of services, and it seems to be working. And so I guess the only question is, what is this something that is advantageous or detrimental to Matterport service providers as they move towards this type of model, would you say?
Yeah, I think it could be both. Obviously the acquisition of VHT on all the different 3D forums like We Get Around Network, or just like conversations we've had on the Matterpod, there's mixed reaction, and I would say most of the mixed reaction though was really negative, and Matterport service providers were pretty upset to see the acquisition of VHT, because basically, like I said, what it means is this vertical navigation up the supply chain of creating 3D tours and hosting them. And I think a lot of MSPs interpret that as less money in their pocket, which might be the case. I actually, I'm not super opinionated on that quite yet. I do think from Matterport's perspective though, I think what it kind of means is their argument would be like, look, rather than you needing to go out and service your own clients and find your own business, actually we're going to turn the model into, we're just going to feed our MSP's business, because it's not like none of these MSPs are actually going to be literal employees of Matterport, but Matterport, their argument might be that as a contractor of Matterport, you're just going to be fed jobs. And basically, as this thing grows, it might seem on the surface right now like, man, this is kind of like Matterport, almost, I guess, kind of undercutting or taking their core business away from itself. But I think Matterport's argument would be like, as this thing grows, these MSPs will actually be so glad that this publicly traded company with a huge marketing budget is actually starting to feed this business to local MSPs. And so I think what it means so to kind of summarize all that, I think in a nutshell, what it means is MSPs, I think over time may kind of turn from being small businesses in local cities into independent contractors that provide services for Matterport. Kind of almost like from this collection of small businesses to almost like an Uber model, where you don't necessarily work for Uber, you just have your own car and you provide services for Uber as an independent contractor. I think something similar could happen with MSPs where like you don't necessarily work for Matterport, but like you are on call with your camera um, to go scan when Matterport feeds you business. And I think, anyways, like I said, it's still to be seen like if that will be better or worse for MSPs in the long run.
It's funny you mentioned the Uber thing because literally in my mind I was thinking the exact same example where it's like Uber is a marketplace that is generating demand for ride sharing, and you just use your car and tie into their demand creation or their marketplace, and you can make money driving people around. And so I think what you said is true, where depending on the Matterport service provider that you talk to, some people might say they're stoked about this and other people might be pretty upset about it. And it just kind of depends on the mentality or, what the business of the Matterport service provider was previously. Because I know I've personally interviewed a handful of Matterport providers, and if I ask them what the biggest struggle they're currently facing from a business standpoint is, a lot of them will say sales, and people don't really know how to go about selling these types of services, slash they don't really want to spend any time doing sales for Matterport. And so, like you said, if you have this big public company that is spending dollars generating demand for Matterport tours, and you just basically tie into that and become a service provider in your local area, then for some people it could be a godsend. But for people that are maybe more on the higher end, performing niche custom services for bigger companies, they may not like the idea of the Matterport tour being commoditized, if you will. I don't know if you can call it that, but so I think that like I say, it just kind of depends on the Matterport provider. Some might like it, some might not like it, but it is an interesting play nonetheless from a Matterport standpoint.
I'm really interested to see, like, obviously Matterport services grew this much last year. Obviously, kind of as a result of them starting to get this going. They only announced this like we said in the last couple months. Essentially, I think the growth that you mentioned about last year just is evidence that they're trying to get something like this going. Now they've like figured out how to package it up and like market it directly to real estate agents a little more coherently. And so I'm actually really interested to like keep up with their quarterly disclosures and see how how it actually grows now that they've productized it and have a clear marketing plan. I also think
Yep.
on the point of like what does this mean for Matterport service providers? I think Gary Vee always talks about this, but it's like we tend to think like in terms of or rather than and so I think a lot of MSPs might view this and think, man, it's either like I'm gonna be my own business and go get my own business by myself and yada yada, or Matterport's just going to basically make me kind of like give me golden handcuffs and just like serve me business, but they're basically going to take my business away. And I actually just don't think that's very realistic. I think Matterport will be successful in capturing a lot of this market and having a significant portion of it, but I still think like there's other services like drone video. There's other services that like can't be accomplished with a Matterport tour that are becoming more and more popular for real estate listings. And so I just think I think Matterport service providers really need to view everything that Matterport's doing to vertically integrate as a blessing and an opportunity that can provide them additional revenue. But I really just have a hard time believing if you go and make a really great relationship with a real estate agent in your area and you have consistent business with them, I just don't think that real estate agent is going to be like, well, actually, I'm going to go over and use Matterport Digital Pro now instead of using, this MSP that I have a local relationship with. And so I think there's a lot of like maybe overreaction to the VHT acquisition and this Digital Pro product, where I think people need to kind of like take a step back and realize their local business and the local relationships that they're creating are going to be most important. But then there might be an opportunity just by joining, the Matterport Pro Capture Services program for them to just get some like additional revenue coming in that they didn't have to do anything for other than put their email, as a capture service provider and have Matterport send it to them. So I just think about this as an and opportunity, not an or situation, if you will.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, in their Q4 highlights, one of the things that Matterport also reported is that 50% of their Q4 subscription revenue came from services or tours outside of real estate. And so if you look at that, it shows, maybe what you could look at it as Digital Pro now is a way for you to just make money pretty simply from real estate services. And now as a Matterport service provider, you can focus on creating custom tours for businesses outside of the real estate industry, because obviously there's a lot of untapped opportunity there as well. And so, like you said, I like thinking about it through the lens of this is more of an and option rather than an or, and this is just proof that, this is one product that is focused on one industry, and obviously Matterport is reporting substantial growth from a revenue standpoint outside of the real estate industry. So kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I just think this real estate stuff is seriously the very bottom of the market as far as like they expect the cheapest price, they expect no customization. It's just like this is like the most commoditized a Matterport product, like a Matterport tour can be, is in this vertical of the market. And I just think, Google, and we can talk about this on another one, but like Google Maps just announced a whole bunch of like really cool 3D maps integrations that I think will drive, the incentive for people to have 3D tours of their businesses. You're seeing Matterport being used more in construction context, for managing projects. And then I think just custom Matterport experiences as well, where it's not just the naked 3D tour, it has different features and things on top of it for, various businesses, schools, etc. I just think is going to become more and more important. And in my opinion, Matterport's not going to be able to vertically integrate with every single one of their possible use cases. And so anyways, just view this as an and opportunity and go after, the higher ticket Matterport provider or Matterport service opportunities out there. So
I agree 100%. So we'll have to do a follow-up on this towards the end when Matterport releases their Q1 2023 report. We'll do a follow-up and take a look at the revenue that they reported from services and see what it looks like. And so it'll be interesting to follow up on this conversation at a later date. But
yeah, when do the end of the quarter is coming right up. It'll probably be by end of April that they'll release that, won't it?
Yeah, I think in the next few weeks we can expect an update of some kind. And so whether it's next episode or next couple episodes, we'll definitely report back on this and circle back.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for watching episode 1 of the Matterpod news show. I don't have any final words. Do you, Christian?
Just go with optimism. Look at things through an optimistic standpoint, and like you said, this is an and opportunity rather than or, and just take it for what it's worth and try and be optimistic about what it could potentially mean for your future business.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. We'll include links to the 2 articles. Well, I guess the article we read and then the report that Christian showed. We'll include those in our show notes. Until next time, appreciate it.